increased importance of pay-per-view buys and a host of interim belts, it's easier than ever to earn a title fight in the UFC. So spare a thought for the fighters who lost their first opportunity and had to wait several years for their second. Today, we look at the veteran fighters who clawed their way back into title contention, beating the matchmakers, punters, and father time in the process. Welcome to the INC, and these are 5 of the longest gaps between UFC title shots. Glover Teixeira's return to title contention may be the most unlikely success story of recent years. Glover first made his debut in 2002 competing in smaller promotions before being signed by the WEC. After starting his career 2-2, Glover amassed a 20-fight winning streak with 18 coming in the distance. This led him to be signed by the UFC and earn a light heavyweight title shot against Jon Jones at UFC 172. Glover would lose a one-sided match by unanimous decision, thanks in part to Jones tearing Glover's labrum early in the fight and sticking his fingers in places they shouldn't be. Glover continued to hang around the division's top 5, but a series of spectacular knockouts led to questions over his long-term future in the sport. By the time he lost to Corey Anderson at Fight Night Hamburg, fans had written off the 38-year-old as a spent force. The Henderson fight sparked a change in Glover's fighting style, adopting a grappling-heavy approach that saw him beat a number of light heavyweight prospects. Most of Glover's wins during this time follow the same routine, surviving early adversity before finishing his opponent by submission or ground and pound. After a 4-fight winning streak, Glover earned a number 1 contender match against former title challenger Thiago Santos. Glover was rocked by Santos multiple times throughout, only for the veteran to persevere and submit his fellow Brazilian in the 3rd round, capping off one of the most unlikely career turnarounds in MMA history.
And Teixeira might be under the chin here. There it is! Glover Teixeira! 5 in a row! He's the number 1 contender!
Glover is set to face light heavyweight champion Jan Blachowicz at UFC 267, 7 years, 6 months, and 5 days since his first title shot against Jon Jones. Demian Maia enjoyed a career renaissance in the 2010s, despite the best efforts of the UFC. Maia first entered MMA as one of the most decorated jiu-jitsu grapplers of all time, and after amassing a 12-1 record, he was given a middleweight title shot against longtime champion Anderson the Spider Silva. The match at UFC 112 is considered one of the worst title fights in UFC history, with Silva clowning and overmatched Maia on his way to a unanimous decision. While Silva received the bulk of the UFC's wrath, Maia struggled for many years to shake off his stigma as a boring fighter. After a decision loss to Chris Weidman at Fight Night Chicago, Maia moved to welterweight in 2012, winning 12 of his next 14 fights, including stoppage wins over Neil Magny, Matt Brown, and Carlos Condit. Despite a groundswell of support, Maia continued to be passed over for a title shot, leaving Dana White to fight off accusations he held a grudge against the Brazilian.
Demian Maia's one of the nicest guys in the world. If you don't like fucking Demian Maia, there's something wrong with you. So I have no, not even close have I ever had a problem with Demian Maia.
Maia couldn't be ignored any longer. And just over 7 years after his title tilt, the Brazilian was given a match against Tyron Woodley at UFC 214, where Maia responded to one of the worst middleweight title fights of all time by having one of the worst welterweight fights of all time.
We're going to shatter the record for fewest total strikes landed in a welterweight title fight.
Oh no, that's not a record we want to break.
No, we don't.
Maia enjoyed mixed results following the fight, before being dropped by the UFC after a loss to Bilal Muhammad, his MMA record standing at 28 wins and 11 losses. Lady Luck made Dan Henderson an unlikely title challenger in 2016. Henderson made history when he signed for the UFC in 2007. As a 2-division champion in Pride, he was given the honor of competing for 2 titles in his first 2 matches with the promotion, losing a unanimous decision to Rampage Jackson, before being submitted by middleweight champion Anderson Silva. Henderson remained a staple of the main event over the coming years, but despite classic matches and his fan-favorite status, a 3rd crack at the belt was frustratingly out of reach. In 2012, Henderson was set to face Jon Jones in the main event of UFC 151, only to rupture his MCL 8 days before the fight, sparking a chain of incidents that led to the entire show being cancelled. By 2016, Henderson was desperately clinging to a spot in the middleweight top 15, when newly crowned middleweight champion Michael Bisping began actively campaigning for a match with the veteran, a move motivated by Bisping's spectacular loss to Henderson at UFC 100. Despite several more deserving contenders, the 46-year-old Henderson was given a third title shot at UFC 204, 8 years and 7 months since his last crack at the belt against Silva. Bisping used his patented volume striking to overwhelm Henderson in the early stages, before the H-bomb nearly silenced the hometown crowd late in the first round.
Oh, he's right! The right hand again! Henderson! Looking for the finish!
Henderson came close to finishing Bisping again a round later, but the British fighter recovered to claim a unanimous decision in one of the best fights of 2016. Henderson retired immediately after the fight, having won over his critics with a brave and spirited performance, and 2 years later received his first post-career accolades when his match with Shogun Rua was inducted to the UFC Hall of Fame. If MMA fans have learned one thing, it's to never write off Vitor Belfort. In 2004, Belfort was part of one of the strangest title fights in UFC history, when he claimed the light heavyweight title from Randy Couture when a seam from his glove cut open Couture's eye. A rematch between the two was scheduled 2 months later, with Couture dominating the bout before a doctor's stoppage in the third round. Vitor would leave the UFC after a unanimous decision loss to Tito Ortiz, embarking on a world tour of promotions including Pride, Cage Rage, and Affliction, before being coaxed back to the UFC to face Rich Franklin at UFC 103. Belfort would make easy work of Franklin, finishing the former champion with strikes in the first round, and with the UFC short on challengers for Anderson Silva, Vitor was given a middleweight title shot 6.5 years after his final bout with Couture. Fans approached the match with skepticism due to Anderson's previous bouts with Brazilian fighters, and those fears appeared to be realized during some cagey opening exchanges. The two men began to open up as the first round continued, before Anderson delivered one of the greatest knockouts in MMA history. Vitor would get 2 further cracks at UFC Gold, stepping in on short notice to face John Jones, before a TRT-induced rampage saw him earn a middleweight title shot against Chris Weidman at UFC 187. After leaving the UFC in 2018, Vitor jumped on the MMA boxing bandwagon, where he made easy work of a 58-year-old heavyweight legend, Evander Holyfield. His old rival Ortiz, however, would prove far less successful.
Right there. Boom.
Oh my God.
He was out right there.
Frank Mir's return to title contention was not only one of the longest, but also the most unlikely. Mir entered the UFC as one of the most dangerous grapplers in the heavyweight division, and after submitting Tim Sylvia at UFC 48, many expected him to have a long and dominant tenure atop 265. 3 months after the fight, however, Mir was involved in a road traffic accident when he was knocked off of his bike by an oncoming car, causing severe knee and ligament damage and leading him to being stripped of the heavyweight title due to inactivity. Mir returned to action after a near 2-year layoff, but after a series of subpar performances, some questioned whether the former champion would ever return to his previous glory. That all changed when Mir took on former pro wrestler Brock Lesnar at UFC 81. Mir was intended to be a sacrificial lamb for the much ballyhooed Lesnar, until a well-timed knee bar and a dubious call from Steve Mazzagatti helped the Vegas native pull off the upset. Mir combined the triumph with wins over Anthony Hardonk and Minotauro Nogueira, and 6 years after the Sylvia fight was given another shot at the heavyweight title, ironically against newly crowned champion Brock Lesnar. Despite putting on considerable bulk for the match, Mir could do little to handle Lesnar's ground and pound, Brock winning by second round stoppage and delivering one of his greatest promos in the process.
Frank Mir had a horseshoe up his ass. I pulled that sumbitch out and I beat him over the head with it. Woo!
Mir remained a prominent figure at heavyweight's top rung, claiming wins over Mirko Cro Cop and Roy Nelson, and even received another shot at the title when he stepped in to face Junior Dos Santos at UFC 146. Mir began winding down his career after a forgettable run with Bellator in 2018, and has recently turned his attention to fathering the career of his 18-year-old daughter, Bella. And now, time for a few honorable mentions. 6 years after her loss to Ronda Rousey, Liz Carmouche earned a shot at the UFC flyweight title, only to give a performance so bad she was released by the promotion shortly after. Frankie Edgar broke a 7-year itch when he faced featherweight champion Max Holloway at UFC 240. Nate Diaz had to wait 7 years before getting a crack at the UFC BMF title. Hey, come on now, it's still more legit than women's featherweight. This is the INC. Please like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a video.